Welcome back to another episode of the Desi Pod, where we continue our theme about culture and growing up in Britain and that Desi mix, where we this time continue that topic of marriage and go one step further and look at that big taboo. And it is a big taboo, is divorce. Why is it frowned upon? What is the issue? And does it sometimes impact on not just individual but other members of the family, friendship groups, and just let the conversation flow from there. Are you boys good for another session?
Perfect. I think that's a
Let's do
really
it.
it's a really good introduction to introduce the topic. And
Yeah.
is it still considered as a taboo? I still think it is. I think divorce, whoever's been through divorce, who's going through divorce, it's a horrid time for both parties, male or female, for families torn apart, children if you've got them in the mix. It's just a very, very difficult period to go through. I've got first-hand experience going through it, and I know friends who and family who have gone through it as well. It's not nice, and especially being pressurized when you are in that situation. Are you ready to let go? Are you ready to make things work? Who's actually there for you? When you are in that situation, when your marriage is on thin ice, and there's been a bit communication breakdown, you're actually seeking help from people out there, and then the people that do tend to give you help are either in successful marriages. Then they'll turn around and say to you, "Oh, well, you're doing this wrong, and maybe you should be more assertive. Maybe you should be more forthgiving, and you should be give and take." It's really nice listening to them when you are not going through it. However, when you are in that dynamics of your marriage falling apart, you just don't want to hear those criticism. There's nobody out there to give you a book or something to say, right, here you go, follow these steps to successful marriage. There is no steps to successful marriage. Everybody's situation is extremely difficult. Yeah, it may be underpinned by certain issues, like financial situations could be a major issue for marriages to break. You might find a spouse and say, right, I like this person, you both like each other, and you romanticize of being a person saying, okay, it's a bit like Bollywood now. You and me, we can live through the dark days and happy days, but no matter what happens, we're together. But when you actually are married, the dynamics shift because you are living with that person. Now, I've got friends who are white, who are obviously a totally different culture to us, and they lived with their partners before they get married. Some of them have been together for 15 years, have children, and have not been married. And I ask them this question, so why are you not married? And they go, well, I don't want to put stress on our relationship. And I will say, well, you together for 15 years, you've got kids, you've got a house, you've gone on holiday. Why don't you want to put a ring on it, and make it formalized? No, we fear that could potentially break our marriage down. And then you look at the other dynamics, or the other spectrum, you've got other sides. So you've got Asians who will want to get married, and there are all these pressures fall on them. And especially divorce, like I said, the pressures could be like financial worries, having to hide your relationship, living with in-laws. Is that a problem? I mean, that could be a discussion for a podcast another day. Living in extended families, does that still exist in this day and age, or have we walked away from that, and has that impacted our family lives in a way or not? But yeah, they live together for 15 years and they're happy, but the minute they get married, they have that fear that our relationship could end. And then you've got people who have been married and are going through difficulties. And I find the major issue is not understanding each other. And you may think, well, if you got married of your choice, what do you mean by not understanding? Trust me, there are certain things that you do not know about your partner, even if you are in a relationship before marriage and you get married, that you only discover when you get married. Simple case of, why have you thrown your towels on the floor? That could be a major issue for a partner. She'd be like, why have you thrown your towels on the floor? And you'd be like, well, that's what I always do. And it can start from that. Subjectively, that might be a massive issue for your spouse, but for you, you might think that's not a problem. And then it starts to brew. Other issues can be like, well, why did you spend so much money on your friends? Why are you still seeing your friends? Well, they're my friends before you got into the picture. You never had an issue before them getting to me, before marriage. But we're married now. We need to start a family. It's a massive issue in our society where these sort of things, when an onlooker who's been successful at marriage might think, oh, they're just small issues. They're not small issues. They're big issues because you're going through it and you're finding it difficult.
The question that you actually mentioned yourself at the beginning was, why is there stigma? Why is it that we Desi folk react differently to the concept of divorce? So I've got a friend who's Somalian. He divorced, and you know what? They both families still get on with each other. He supports his ex-wife and his children. And equally, I've got Desi folk that have had marital problems and have divorced, and the entire wider family is at loggerheads. They don't speak to each other, they don't look at each other, and you're thinking, well, okay, hang on, where's the balance? There's two completely distinct approaches, and it's not just one family. I'm talking about number of Desi families versus number of non-Desi families. So, is it that we have an additional stereotype or stigma attached, or is it, I'm paraphrasing, and I don't mean to put words in anybody's mouth here. Maybe it's a case that society, when you're from a Desi background, just thinks you're a failure. I don't know. We can
You've
all
got
come
a
up with
great point,
examples.
and I'll add to that, I'm really intrigued to see Abdurrahman's point of view on this. But what I've realised is that when you are going through a divorce, going back 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, if there were a couple who were just say within the wider society, where the wider family network were going through some difficulties, you will have your elders straight away jump into it and say, right, what's your issue? What's your issue? And let's iron it out. Let's see what the bigger problem is. Or is it money? Well, why are you not earning a lot of money? What's the problem? Where they will try plug in the gaps as best as they could to strengthen the marriage. And they'll say, I don't like him going out too late. He's with his friends. And then the elders would say to the male in the husband of a relationship, well, she's got a point. You shouldn't really go out till late. Go out as a family. Still have time with your friends. We're not saying sever those ties, but you need to find a balance. And those conversations were key to solidify successful marriage because there were conversations that were taking place. I feel in this day and age, everybody is, this is my situation. You don't know me better than I do. I don't need your help. I think there's a sense of pride that kicks in. I don't need people's help because I know what I'm going through and I will make this work. Granted, you in your own head may think that you are more than capable of going through this, but I've learned it the hard way where I've realized that sometimes speaking to your elders or people who are successful in anything, especially in business or whatever facets of life, if they are successful in what they do, the younger me would not listen to them. But as I've grown older, I've realized, no. I need to listen. If the Lord has blessed me with 2 ears, it's because I should listen twice and speak once from my mouth. But we start to speak over. So it's the art of listening was never there. I didn't understand that. So if somebody's speaking to me and say, look, I've seen your situation, I've heard of your situation. I personally think you should do this. I should have really looked at it and thought, wait a minute, this person's been married for 40 years, successful in everything. They've had the ups and downs. I need to listen to them rather than saying, you don't know what you're on about. I know what I'm on about. This is what they do. And I think that's what a lot of problems have caused. And I've looked at some of the statistics and it's alarming how the curve has just gone straight up. How people within the first year of marriage are dissolving the marriage. And you're thinking, well, prior to marriage, you've been together for 5, 6 years. You clearly know A to Z about the person. And you got married. You blessed yourself by being married. And all of a sudden, it's just capitulated. It's down the dumps. How's that happened? So I'm trying to look at it that way, thinking, is it because of your ignorance and arrogance of thinking, do you know what? I don't need to listen to this person. I know my situation better. And then listening to people who are not married. That's the biggest qualm I've had with people. If you are married and you're taking advice of people who are single to save your marriage, that's the biggest mistake you're making. Because until you don't live together and that other person's single, you should not speak to them at all. How do they know or have any life experience of being married when they're not married themselves? And I think a lot of people fall into that trap and think, well, my friend said this and my mate said this, and we should be going out more on holidays because they do it. Well, they're single, they have a group of friends, you're married, you have got a spouse. You can't just leave everything and go because you are living together. But they do this. It doesn't work. It's chalk and cheese. The both situations are different. Well, I mean, I want to know what you think about this, Abdul.
No, it's true. I mean, I think all the points are really interesting. I just want to pick up on the point that you made, Isaac, around stigma, around the whole divorce thing. I mean, I'm not married myself, so maybe I'm the least experienced, to talk about this particular issue. But there is that issue around stigma, right? Where sometimes you have this opinion, whether it's divorce or anything else. What will people say? I'm not going to do it because what will people say, right? That's always the one barrier that kind of stops you from doing things. But I do also feel that the people who know a relationship best are the people behind closed doors, because they're the people living with each other. They're the people who are spending the rest of their lives together, and therefore there's their relationship, and then there's the extra layer of stigma, which may or may not necessarily be true, right? So I think everybody should have ownership of their own actions and not be heavily influenced by these external forces. That doesn't mean to say, for example, you don't seek advice, just like Hasnan said, right? You should absolutely be seeking advice from the people who you trust, the people who you know can give you good advice. That's always important because there's only so many things that you can account for on your own. But at the same time, having ownership of your relationship is really, really important. But I guess one of my kind of questions that I wanted to ask on the back of what you said, Esther, around the importance of understanding in a relationship. How do you think you can establish understanding in a relationship?
Well, that's if anybody can understand, if anybody a book you can write about understanding. But I personally think
Middle question.
it's really listening, becoming a really good listener. I think sometimes we're just shouting over each other and we're not really listening, and there might be situations. Are you listening to my problems? We should be able to pick up those telltale signs, and they could be from start off on. And then I get it, you're busy with your work and your career and your family and your friends. But I think the minute you become married or you are in a marital relationship, it's you and your spouse. Ultimately, that's your home that you would you would start having a family from. And I think it's just having those honest conversations with each other and thinking, if there is something bothering you, then speak about it, raise it, find an appropriate time. But if you let it brew inside you, then it starts to fester into something that becomes. I mean, I see men as being, and I hope it doesn't upset people out there or it's deemed controversial. But people say that men are just saying we're simple people. We need to be told.